So here I am at home, surrounded by notes, with a bright light in my face. I feel almost as though I'm on Broadway. Now, my goal with this expedition is to make it easier for people to understand what has happened. Now, don't be confused to think, that the administrative authorities who concern themselves with me, the museum mafia in particular, would have this talk safeguarded under First Amendment rights. They don't believe in that kind of thing. If they thought that I was going to get anywhere, that anyone was going to believe me, they would just shoot me, as they've shot many other people who've tried to get help for American society by appealing to America's better senses, rhyme and reason. Instead, what we're seeing is a group of people who, known for very sadistic practices, as you can see from things that they've done to me, Nazi types, is something of a gamble, but it's not a very great gamble. I think you'll agree as my talk goes on, what I'm going to talk about. They're gambling. Someone might hear me and believe me and agree with me, but it's not a very great risk. And what I'm here to discuss with you is why it's not a very great risk, based on what they really did. You see, what instead they expect, and I expect. I mean, it's hardly likely, and I think you'll agree once you've heard all of the details, that what they're going to say is, well, we let him speak, and it's obviously absurd. You don't agree with that. You agree with us. We're much more august and wealthy people. You don't want to agree. You like us more, and it's not a matter of just that you like them more, but that what I have to say, obviously on its face, can't be taken seriously. You'll agree, I'll agree, they'll agree, or at least they hope everyone will agree. Obviously, I don't agree. What I have found, among other things, is the perplexing discovery of the script in the murder of JFK, Martin Luther King, and confession to the AIDS attack, that explains to everyone who they were and what they did, with one small problem, that they have a sort of Slipknot where they say, no, it didn't quite happen that way. They say John Lennon was killed and Reagan was shot at, and they are the victims, and anybody who disagrees with that is an enemy of the Pentagon Disney state. Now, the reason why I want to talk to you about this is a Slipknot is, for one thing, just from the point of view of being a punk. I've created a website where I take head on the idea that it happened the way they said it did. Zonkaloo WordPress.com. You see, I don't believe it really did happen the way they say it did. Reagan's attorneys from Pentagon Disney and the Federal Emergency Management Agency had me in Washington, D.C. the day he claims he was shot. All things being normal, he was shot at, but the night before, he came out and waved to me. So my being there is an obscure oddity. Why would I be there, and why am I important? Well, I was a little boy from Bush's ship in the Navy that was stationed off the north coast of Japan, and the AIDS attack was known as the Little Girl Operation. If you look at the script, they correlate the shooting of Martin Luther King to a girl named Dee Dee's birthday, and they gassed me in a place called King's Estate. Now, my websites like Story Checks Out, Annex, have shown that the flywheels at work in the script that show that Dee Dee was some child pornography starlet from a group of people from the Neva Corporation from Japan who were building a empire through the pornography industry for the people who were entrapped in the Venus flytrap of the sexual liberation. But the Slipknot is that they say John Lennon was also killed, when in reality he appears to have staged a double fantasy game. One of the things that we know about this situation is that Robert Fripp of King Crimson's band was involved. Now, one of the things that I presented to you that they're sure will never come across is that a series of profoundly degrading acts of torture and cruelty have been visited on me by these sadists, in addition to gross insincerity being illustrated by them. There was never any real friendship for the United States from the Beatles. They said the English army had just won the war. What about us? The British had made great insistence to be the high priests, judges at Nuremberg and exclude America, give us second place. Jimmy Kennedy, my name they always called me Jimmy, was the best-selling songwriter before they showed up. They didn't want to share center stage with anybody. Oswald Mosley was leader of the British Union of Fascists. That's directly indexed to Lee Harvey Oswald. General Walker, who knew Lee Harvey Oswald, it appears on the back cover of the British Union of Fascists book by Colin Cross. There's something known as code switching. It's when a person changes the way that they're talking when they're around their friends because they don't want to talk like they hide how they talk to their mother. And of course, when people are interrogated by the Nazis, they become very frightened for their lives and they switch codes. Well, code switching is something that people who are intelligent gentlemen know. They understand that. If they're dealing with somebody who's very frightened, a victim of torture, they know that the person might be, for fear of their lives, hedging what they're saying to try to get help. And despite the fact that I hitchhiked from Pittsburgh to St. Louis just to hear Robert Fripp play, full knowing I was representing a case of terrible torture, Peter Gabriel and Robert Fripp and the University of Pittsburgh all pretended they didn't understand the coded language that I was using when I came right out and described being kidnapped, brutalized, tortured. And they invented this thing called Amnesty International just in time for the AIDS attack to demand nonviolence from somebody who they had tortured. And this was all wrapped up in the claim that I was, pushing myself where I wasn't wanted. And they created this slanderous mosaic through the Gurdjieff Society, where I was invited to play music with Robert Fripp and write poetry with Peter Gabriel, sort of. I met him at a theater, but they all knew each other. And they created this wolf pack by writing slanders about me. Meanwhile, they knew that they had implanted a neurotrauma and that I was in a state of semi-coma from being tortured, all while pretending they didn't understand that I was trying to get help. And they proceeded to play a game. Now, their slaughterhouse mystique, it's based on the pleasure principle. We would never do that. We are too like Al Gore, the Secret Service creep. His name is like Al Gore. If you recombine the letters, you get galore, pussy galore. And that's the way the Rolling Stones live. They're surrounded by sex. And so you just naturally assume they wouldn't go along with Franklin Graham's take on the AIDS attack, which is it's freeing the world from the sexual sinners in order to give more to Jesus or whatever he thinks. And if you look at the details of what happened to me, you find that, there's a lucrative conspiracy web. There are people who just want to get their hands on the publication rights. They want to cheat me of any of my life's work. They've stolen from me, they've tortured me, they've threatened to kill me, they've put parasites on my body, things in my mouth, they've tortured me with nerve agents, they've done hideous things. And they just keep doing it. And they get away with it and it gratifies them, and they say, well, you see, it's because he has this ludicrous take on what really happened. What really happened is that he could have saved John Lennon. Well, they don't show you the body. He was we were talking about Pentagon Disney attorneys. The person who promoted this idea worked for Pentagon Disney. She was introduced to me at Mellon College by a man named Michael Mullen. Well, she did the voice for Mullen, and you see, the sort of intonations of language at work. And their idea is to create a persona of me that they can just exploit. They can torture me, rub me out, and people will say, yay, and will cheer the very people who released AIDS, who killed JFK, who killed Martin Luther King. Now, personally, I don't care if Dexter King has a harem. But if it gets so bad and he is so selfish that he will not stand for people knowing the truth about something like this, then where is hope anymore? Dr. Ralph Proctor, WQED, announced that, in Africa, a man without children might as well be dead. So the British were saying, well, we'll punish Jimmy by chemically castrating him and making sure he never can have children, and Yoko Ono will be gratified, and pour scabies on you, and hope that's enough for, the people who are in headsets paying attention to every word, because Donald Trump had run this hot wire through the psyche of the neuroplasm, demanding everything that's in there. They want to hear, they got the political opposition, forced the political opposition to tell the story of when he woke up in tears because the children had bukkake him in his sleep. Now, if you don't know what that is, that's fine, no problem, but it's extremely sexually degrading. And you have people like Michael Reagan and Peter Gabriel and Robert Fripp with their headsets on. Tell us it again. Tell us it again. We want to hear this humiliation, because everything for them is like jonesing, sucking at humiliation, because that's what they want. I hope it's enough. I hope it's enough to gratify. And they lie about every single detail. There's all sorts of evidence in cinema. There's all sorts of evidence in magazine semiotics that show that it was a colossal fraud, tracing back to the Paul is dead trial run. Now, they may deny this, and they will deny this, and they'll grab at copyright, and they'll say that's Slipknot, it can't be real. But I went to the Department of the Navy, talk about can't be real. And I asked them, how many people knew in 1974, this was back when Caspar Weinberger, who was Reagan's Secretary of Defense, he lived on Mount Desert Island where they used me for that horrible AIDS war game. How many people in 1974, when he was studying mental retardation, knew he was going to be ending up as Reagan's Secretary of State? And they said, well, that was 1980. Not very many people knew in 1974. Okay, so not very many people knew in 1974, but somebody knew well enough that the men who attacked me and tortured me were named Ronnie and Casper, just like Reagan and Weinberger. One of them was Ronnie Zasinski, right? So we have these sizzing shears going at the word sound sin. right? So you have this situation put together with these people. Now, they're using a moral code about abortion and sin and sex, right? Okay, fine. Now, if you look at the moralists who would never, ever have an abortion, I mean, that's really fine. Okay, great. People who are mature, who understand their lives well enough to have them under control. They're not obnoxious about it. They're not tacky. If it happens to somebody else, it's sad. Okay, fine, no problem. But we're talking about hardcore Nazis who use abortion to say that what they did isn't so bad because of abortion. And that's where I draw the line. That's not a reason to kill the President of the United States. I'm sorry. It's not a reason to release the AIDS virus. It's not a reason to take away from a disabled person their rights and dignities. But you can see that they did it. You know, you can see it if you go to the Texas School Book Weebly site. You can see their script. You can go to my work blog and see some of the semiotics. I mean, you have to explore. There's a lot of vignettes. I've worked very hard trying to get this kind of thing across. But the legacy of John Lennon at the Warhol Confederacy is failure to warn. They knew about this in 1984 when the stuff about AIDS was first stirring. I was in a medical library, and they wrote to me something about the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. I'm sorry. They came to Seattle and committed a Ripper murder. And they're like weird sweepstakes. They think there's something Native American about themselves. You know, they come with a hatchet and tomahawk some person to death. And in a way, you know, for them, I guess that's what British royalty. Peter Gabriel married into the British royal scene. He was married to the Lord Secretary to Queen Elizabeth, you know. And to them, I guess, you know, they're Native Americans. They dress up and hatchet somebody. And they call it casino alchemy, right? So the Native Americans have casinos. And they're talking about this like intellectual sweepstakes about the heritage of the United States that they put up for grabs. With this, you know, Duke William Pufnstuf character and his Meghan. I mean, I don't wish them any harm, but they're attacking somebody who's a witness to this, who's important. I mean, I know what I'm talking about. And they're saying, no, it's not true because you could have saved John Lennon. Show me the body. What makes you think, why are you supporting the people who did it? And just throwing in my face this stuff about saving John Lennon. It's because Lennon's real legacy is failure to warn. They never said a word. They went along with the whole thing. They produced the whole thing. It was a magical mystery tour up on Mount Pleasant Island. They said it was a experience park, replete with 911 and laboratories going up in flames and girls being murdered. I mean, this was an experience park for these ripper hatters like Mick Jagger. He shouldn't be allowed to play in Seattle. It's ridiculous that we're allowing them to play in Seattle. And yet they did it. And they just rub it in the face because of the Slipknot. You see, Reagan didn't know, they said, and Lennon was really killed. But Reagan had me in D.C. when he claims he was shot. He's out there waving to me, and they plant the script on my house. What's going on with this stuff? I have a right to ask those kinds of questions because they put my goddamn name on the whole thing. What right did they have to do that? You know, now, Queer Seattle, they think, oh, they know everything. You know, we're gonna use this script to save the world by taking away the rights of somebody who was tortured. Wow, that's neat, you know. And they have Michael Foucault to back them up at UW. And of course, you have like the torrential perfectos from Columbia University in New York who chase off the Iranian president, apparently blissfully unaware that Michael Foucault was the ambassador who worked for Reagan to work things out for the Ayatollah when they took the hostages for the signal day of 444 days. That's a signal day. That's a signal number. The whole thing was patterned, and they say, no, it's not true, but it is true. That's my point. They say it's not true, but it is true, and you can follow the details if you read and look, but it all comes to this Slipknot, where they say, no, Reagan didn't know, and Mount Desert Island was just a magic trick. What are the other magic tricks? You see the magic trick in Veronica Lake's piece called Now You See It. about love, right? In which he disappears and comes back to life, and they're waving around the ace of spades and stuff, which is a symbol of death, right? They had Casper. Casper. Try to grasp it, they're using name signifiers. The script was gay, ill, Carolyn bursting, like Christmas carols and bombs bursting, right? Gay, ill, church, ill. They're using name signifiers. These are homophones. It's not that they're telling the truth. It's not that we live in a society where we want to be governed by Diogenes, people who are all lying, okay? That's not what we want. That's not why we elected JFK in the first place. We deserve better. We deserve to face the facts that the British stabbed us in the back. That's what really happened. Okay, and if you look at it any other way, you say, oh no, they're great, they're wonderful. John Lennon gave us Imagine and we want peace. I want peace too. I want them to leave me the hell alone. They have their Slipknot. You agree with them, so why not just leave me the hell alone? Because it's obvious that I'm telling the truth.